Okay, this is the installation instruction video series for the long-range wireless remote control for the Honda EU6500iS. This one not only has a range with the standard transmitters of between 400 and 500 feet, but if you get the optional accessory transmitter, this one is sold separately. It gives you a range of approximately 2,000 feet. This one not only has an improved range, but it's actually easier to install than my last version. Installation is pretty straightforward and simple. Take the handle off the front of the generator. That's done by removing the two 8mm shoulder bolts that have a 12mm head off of each side. Pull the handle off. Then take the two 6mm shoulder bolts with the 10mm head that holds the plastic cover in place. One on each side. And there's two acorn nuts at the bottom. And go ahead and slide the plastic cover off. You'll have to remove the handle brackets next. Each handle bracket is held on with two nuts. They're 12mm. The main control panel is held on with three more nuts. These are 10mm. There's one on each side. And then one right down here. This one is actually harder to get it out than it is to get it back in. Take a long number 2 Phillips head screwdriver. Remove the fuel selector knob from the front of the generator. This goes all the way through the control panel, so it needs to be removed. Place some kind of an insulator over the top of the battery. The positive terminal does have a rubber boot on it, but the rubber boot can be shifted around. So what I use is just a folded up shop towel. Lay that over the top of it also. how your control panel folds out. The radio is very similar to the previous version, with one obvious exception. The antenna is now no longer a simple short wire. There is a piece of coax cable, approximately 5 feet long. Do not, under any circumstances, attempt to cut this coax cable and then resolder it back together. Because if you change the length of it, you're going to change the SWR on the radio, and it will no longer function anywhere nearly as well. Installation of this is even simpler than the last one. Put one of the pieces of Velcro on the inside of the control panel. The other piece of Velcro is already on the radio itself. And then stick the radio in place. Coming out of the radio, you'll see a plug with 3 wires. There's one red wire, one black wire, one white wire. Route the plug underneath the main harness, and it will plug in to Honda's factory remote control harness. So you'll route it under here so it comes out, and here's Honda's factory remote control harness right down here at the bottom. This simply plugs in. And just route the wires in such a way that they don't get pinched or anything on you. And now they're nicely out of the way. The antenna, take the antenna base. Incidentally, it is magnetic, so it'll allow it to stick anywhere. Route it under the main harness. And then allow it to come out right through the bottom here. We'll go ahead and finish attaching that later. I'm just routing it out of the way for now. Okay. Now with the main remote control plug plugged in to the Honda's stock remote control harness, come back to the radio and you'll see there are 2 yellow wires. One of the yellow wires has a 3/16 spade terminal or spade connector on it. The other one has a simple splice connector on it. If you look at the stock economy mode switch, there are 2 wires going to it. One is white, one is yellow. You will unplug the yellow wire off of the top post of the switch and cut the stock connector off of it. So now you've got the stock yellow wire that used to go to the top terminal on the economy mode switch. Take the yellow wire with the splice connector, run it underneath the main harness, and fit the stock yellow wire into the end of this splice connector, and go ahead and crimp it down. Take the second yellow wire that comes from the radio, and you'll take this 3/16 spade terminal and plug it onto the back of the economy mode switch where you pull Honda's original yellow wire off of. So now you've only got 2 wires left coming out of the radio. The black wire is ground. And the brown wire, or tan wire, is what's going to control the outlets. Take the relay. There's a bullet connector on the white wire of the relay that simply plugs into the tan wire. Then there's a green wire that grounds the control box to the rest of the generator frame. Take the screw that holds that green wire in place out. Take the black wire from the radio, feed the screw through that, then take the black wire from the relay, which also has a ring terminal on it, and feed the screw through it. And then take Honda's stock green wire and feed the screw through it. So you'll have 3 ring terminals on this screw now. 2 black ones from the wireless remote kit, and the green one, which was stock Honda. And go ahead and tighten down that screw. Now, on the relay, you'll have 2 wires left. One is red, one is blue. The bottom outlet of the 20 amp has a blue wire that goes from the relay to the bottom outlet. You'll remove this blue wire. There's 2 ways to do it. You can either remove the outlet and pull it out where you can get at it nicely, or if you've got an offset screwdriver, you can loosen this screw that holds the blue wire onto the side of the outlet. You'll see that the blue wire has an open ring terminal, and that simply slides in place on this bottom screw. That's where you're going to take the red wire with the open ring terminal and slide that onto the screw where you just removed the blue wire. And you go ahead and tighten it down. Then take the blue wire from the relay and plug it back to the back of this circuit breaker where the original blue wire used to go. Then take one of the tie wraps or zip ties, whichever name you prefer, it's included in the kit, and attach the relay to this blue wire. That's probably as good a place as any. Go ahead and take a break. Okay, that's pretty much all there is to it. Stick the radio itself to the piece of Velcro that you would stick to the inside of the control box. Then run the 3 wires that have a plug that will plug into Honda's stock harness down underneath the main harness, right through this area, and then plug it into the harness. Then take the 2 yellow wires that come out of the radio, and you can see the back of the economy mode switch here. This wire, the top one on the switch, or as it's looking now, one closest to my body, you would unplug the yellow wire from, cut the original factory connector off of the yellow wire, and it would be splice connected to the yellow wire with a splice connector coming out of the radio. Then take the 3/16 spade connector on the yellow wire and plug it in to the back of the economy mode switch. Take the relay, plug the white wire from the relay into the tan wire from the radio. And incidentally, if this connector does not feel good and snug, take a pair of pliers and simply squeeze this connector down just a little bit. It doesn't take much, just squeeze it just a little bit if it didn't feel tight, because when you plug this together, you want to feel it snap together. Then take the black wire from the relay and the black wire from the radio and add those to the Phillips head screw. Then you'll remove the blue wire from the back of the circuit breaker to the bottom outlet. That would be this wire here. You remove this stock wire, connect the blue wire from the relay to the back of the circuit breaker, the red wire from the relay to the bottom outlet. Now, it's simply a matter of fitting it all back together nicely. And watch your connectors that go into the inverter unit to make sure that you don't pinch any wires when you're putting it back together. But you'll slide the control box on over the small 6mm stud and the 2 8mm studs on each side, and then of course there's a small 6mm stud down here. I'm going to go ahead and put the nuts, the 10mm nuts, on the 6mm studs, finger tight for right now, so that the control panel does not come off on me. I'll go and snug down the smaller screws. Now what I'm going to do is, this is the harness that we plugged in to the stock Honda harness, and this is our antenna wire. So what I'm going to do is tuck the antenna wire back behind this flange and zip tie it to our other 3 wires that went to the plug. It'll become painfully obvious why I'm doing this in a couple of minutes. Number 1, so it doesn't just flop around. If you look at the front cover, Honda has made a notch in the battery cover that can be knocked out to plug Honda's stock wired remote control into. I knocked this little plug out to route the antenna wire through. So because of that, I'd like for the antenna wire to come out real close to where this plug is. So now we're just going to take the antenna, and for the time being, I'm just going to hang it from this bottom bracket. Then we'll make sure that none of the other wires that we've put in are in any danger of being pinched or cut or anything else like that. Phillips head screwdriver. And go ahead and reinstall the fuel selector knob. If you'll remember, when we took the knob off, it was originally in the off position, so we're going to reinstall it with the pointer pointing to the off position, so that now the fuel selector valve works again. Then we'll start installing the brackets that hold the handle in place. And there is a left and a right bracket. If you have any confusion as to which one came off of the left side versus which one came off of the right side, the nut goes between the bracket and the control box. And do the same for the other side. Okay. Now I'll just make sure that everything is routed correctly. And then I'll slide the plastic cover in place. Before we can put the plastic cover on, we've got to remove the battery door so that we can route the antenna wire in the correct location. If you choose to route the antenna wire differently, go for it. The only rule is don't cut the wire and attempt to resolder it. It's not that simple. So now the cover's fitted back over it. If you wanted to put a notch or something right through here, you'd notch the plastic cover and route the antenna wire through this or something. That's not really critical. As long as you don't cut the antenna wire, you're good. Now we put the two acorn nuts on the bottom. Put the two black shoulder bolts into the top. And now, if you're simply going to put the antenna on top of the fuel tank, you can put the excess antenna wire right in the battery bay here. But if you're going to be mounting the antenna on top of the generator shed or something like that, if you've used it for a remote cabin and you'd like to put the antenna wire on top of the shed that the generator is in, there is enough wire to be able to extend quite a distance from the generator itself. Since I'm going to be putting it on the fuel tank, I'm going to take this excess wire and just tuck it down right in front of the battery. And of course, here's the piece that I notched out, and in the stock Honda battery cover, it's clearly identified as to how to notch it out. In fact, it's also covered in the owner's manual. and put the handles back on. Easiest way to reattach the handles, squeeze the two thumb latches and hang them into place on the front of the generator. And put the original two mounting bolts back where they belong. Now operation is very simple. Put the key in it, turn the key to the remote position, and the generator works off of the wireless remote control. Incidentally, you will get two of these wireless remotes with the kit. And if you need an even longer than the standard 500-foot range, I have an optional controller that'll control up to 2,000 feet. I'm not going to start it and run it for a long period of time because we are in an enclosed shop and I really don't want to deal with that much carbon monoxide use. But at any rate, I put the fuel selector in the on position, I put the remote control switch, or the key switch in the remote position, and press button number 1. It's running. I'm going to go ahead and shut it off with button number 2. Button number 1 starts it, button number 2 stops it, button number 3 toggles in and out of economy mode, and button number 4 now turns the outlets on and off. And that should just about do it.